What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, your home for the 2020 World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. My name is Jeff Spiegel, and today we've got a fun clip from our show. Last night, on Monday night, I sat down with Justin Lorber, a.k.a. Future Dodgers, if you follow him on Twitter, and we had a great conversation about prospects, 1 through 10 last week, 11 through 100 last night. But then also towards the end, we did a little segment called Big Deal or No Deal, and I thought this was a really fascinating conversation we had as it related to David Price seemingly publicly lobbying to become a relief pitcher. And so Justin and I discussed, is David Price a relief pitcher for the Dodgers this season? Is that a good idea or a bad idea? So check it out. Here's my conversation with Justin Lorber. Let's shift. It's sort of related to the conversations we've been dancing around. We'll get to Big Deal, No Deal. And the first one I want to give you is David Price. I'll preface with the question, and then I'm going to read you a long quote from David Price. The question is, what do we think about the fact that David Price seems to be lobbying publicly for a bullpen role? So here's a full interaction that he had with the press the other day. Somebody mentioned, hey, you pitched on 3 days rest for relief appearance. Now you started. Are you preparing yourself for any role? He said, quote, I think that's what we're trying to do. If I get my pitches built up to whatever we're trying to do, I do think that's a lot easier to do now as opposed to making appearances out of the bullpen or shorter rest at the beginning of the regular season. If they ask me to start a game, that would be a lot tougher. It's easier to get ramped up now and then taper back a little bit if I'm throwing out of the bullpen as opposed to just working out. So basically he starts off by saying, hey, I'm sort of preparing for anything. They asked, do you envision yourself being a high leverage relief pitcher at some point, pitching back-to-back days? Absolutely, he says. The times that I have thrown out of the bullpen, it's always been on short rest. I feel like the more that I throw, the more crisp my stuff and pitches get. I enjoy having the opportunity to go out there and help this team win as much as I can. I think that's the one thing that's tough about being a starter. You get to play every 5 days. As a reliever, you go to the field, you know you have an opportunity to help the team be successful. That's just kind of my attitude toward being in the bullpen and the way I look at it. He goes on to say, I'll get outs wherever they ask me to. If it's the beginning of the game, the middle, the end, I'm open for all of it. The last question is willingness to take any role, similar to the unselfish tone that Mookie Betts set last year. He said, I've never really thought about it. I want my teammates to know I want us to be the best version of the Dodgers that we can be. Whatever that entails me doing, I'm okay with that. I've done this for a long time. I know we have a tremendous amount of talent with our young guys. Those guys deserve opportunities to go out there and be starters. I want those guys to go out there and be successful and build their routine as a starter. They have really, really good stuff, and I want to see those guys be successful. If me going to the bullpen gives those guys more opportunities, I'm all for that. This is so fascinating to hear a guy who is projected as a starting pitcher by just about everyone, seemingly openly, publicly lobbying. And this is not the first time this type of interaction has happened, for a spot in the bullpen so that Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin can get shots at the starting rotation. Justin, what is your reaction? Because this is mind-blowing to me.
So are we still playing big deal or no deal?
Big deal or no deal.
Big
deal or no deal that David Price is publicly lobbying for a spot in the bullpen.
I think it is a big deal because you'll hear guys talk about, well, I'm willing to do anything for the team. I'd love to start, but I'll do whatever the team asks. And this is not quite that tone. He's saying like, yeah, I'm down to throw, in the bullpen. I'll come out on back-to-back days. And I think specifically the way he's talked about getting guys like Dustin May and Tony Gonsolin their innings and making sure that they can continue to develop. It's evidence of his character. He's looking out for young guys who have their entire career ahead of them. And yeah, I'd say that's a pretty sizable nugget of news, just because if he is fine with going to the bullpen, it's one less piece to figure out, because before you have 7 legitimate major league starters, maybe even 8 with Jimmy Nelson, who you want to get innings over the course of the year. If he says, yeah, I can go to the bullpen for a couple months, that just gives you more leeway to find innings for those other guys.
Not to mention, we're talking about trying to figure out who the second lefty is out of the bullpen. David Price would solve that problem. And I mean, just to be perfectly honest, I love Kenley Jansen. Kenley Jansen has been great this spring, but Price gives you one more guy that you would absolutely trust with the game on the line in a late inning situation, I think. A guy who's been in the biggest moments. So, yes, we know the salary. You kind of have to throw that out as you're doing all the math on this. Yes, paying $17 million a year or half of that or whatever they're paying him for to be a non-closer reliever probably doesn't make a ton of sense. But when you factor in May and Gonsolin getting some more opportunities to start, It's definitely interesting. Again, to me, it's just a big deal because of the way that he's going about it. It's not to say that he's doing this underhandedly or that Roberts doesn't know, but he's just open, and you imagine he's having these conversations as well. So a couple more nuggets here. We've got a few more, actually. There's a lot going on. This one's a shorter. Corey Knebel touching 96 miles an hour with his fastball. Roberts was asked if he would be pitching in high leverage situations this year. Absolutely. I think his experience, the stuff, his openness to pitch any inning, I trust him. Big deal or no deal to hear Roberts saying that about a guy like Knebel, who's brand new to the team, has coming off basically not had his best year in 3 years, saying absolutely he's a high leverage guy for us.
Not a big deal, just because I think that was something that was generally assumed before this. I don't think it took Dave Roberts saying that for people to say that he's going to be one of the high leverage guys.
Yeah, and I guess it depends on how big of a group is that, right? Like him saying he's a high leverage guy, does that mean he's one of the top 5 relief pitchers the Dodgers have? Because that's not controversial. But is he saying, he trusts him more than, I don't know, Blake Trinan or something? I believe he actually said he has Trinan ahead, and obviously Jansen's the closer. So maybe Knebel's third in that list. Okay, next one.